welcome to Hexed Encountered. My name's Joe. In this video, we'll be doing gameplay of scenario number 35 in Panzer. This is Expansion 4, France 1940. I did an introductory video where I kind of went over the scenario and the setup and all that stuff. So if you haven't watched that and are interested in that kind of background information, please feel free to jump over there and watch that. I will throw up a card here so that you can easily do so. But we're going to get right down to it. The first step is to determine who sets up first. And to do that, we're going to roll a d10 for each side. So I have my d10s right here. The black will be for the Germans. The red will be for the French. That's a 10 for the Germans and a 5 for the French. So the Germans will set up first. So I'm going to do that, and then I will come back, show you the German setup and the French setup, and then we will get gameplay underway. Okay, so we'll do a quick overview of the setup here. So this is the Germans. This is the northern group. So I'll zoom out so you can get a better kind of bird's eye view. But these guys are going for the hill objectives. There are 3 hexes that you need to capture in order to control the hill. That will ultimately be worth some victory points. So that is the first set there that we need to check out. So we have 3 Panzer IIIs, 3 Panzer IVs, and 3 Panzer IICs here in this group. The stacking limit, in case you're wondering, is 6. Each of these counters represents an individual vehicle. So basically it's platoons of tanks, essentially. So we have 3 3Fs, 3 4Ds, 3 2Cs here. Now we'll switch it up and look at the southern group who will be going for the main objective. Okay, here's our southern group. These are heading for the town of Isest. So in this pile we have Panzer 3F with our commander, who is Captain Lehmann, Hauptmann Lehmann here. I'll go over what all of this stuff means later, but these are his ratings. You get a bunch of leader counters with Expansion 4, covering pretty much all the forces from all the previous games. So you have Germans, of course, you have Americans, you have Soviets, you have British, and you have French. So there's a good assortment. Did I say Soviet? Obviously Soviet as well. Ranging from, I think, corporals up to like majors or colonels, maybe. I don't remember off the top of my head, but there's a good assortment of them, and you flip it over and there's 2. So there's 2 versions and you can pick accordingly. So they are attached to a vehicle. So these guys would be together, and then underneath them we have 2 Panzer Cs and another Panzer 3F. So we have 4 vehicles plus our Hauptmann, who's leading the company. This is a company level force. We have 3 Panzer IIIs and 2 Panzer 1Bs also in here. So these guys will be, 2 Panzer 1Bs. These guys will be our main force, who will be heading west in this direction. You can see some of the terrain here, hedgerows, orchards. There's some fields up here. This is clear, of course. Road terrain, which really allows you to get your maximum move, like the Panzer IIIs here would have a 9 on here. They could go 9 hexes. 6 on a path. The path, you can see a 1 path hex is right here, kind of in the corner. And then 4 over terrain. Now each one, these are movement speed, I think is what they call it in the rules. But basically it means that, clear will cost 1, but then you have other ones that will cost more than 1. So, of course, you can only move so much. You can move up to your movement allowance. You can always move 1 hex unless the terrain is prohibited. Kind of your standard tactical game kind of movement, essentially. I mean, there's nothing revolutionary or out of left field here with the way this works. All right, so now let's switch it up and go to the other side of the map and look at what the French have set up. Okay, so up here we have the French. These are... how many of these are? There are 5 H-39s here. And this is the French forces, northern force, essentially. They're heading east towards the hills. This is the end of my plexi right here, so you see the line there, but this is a 3-map scenario using maps 24, 25, and 27. 24 is in the middle. You can see the number 24 right here. That is the left edge of map 24. This here is map 25, and map 27 is where the Germans set up. So these guys will be pushing east along the road, probably, at least initially, because we have a lot of terrain. There's forest here. There's a town right here. You can kind of see the edge of it. There's some orchards. There's a lot of terrain that's going to block, and the hill is right on the other side of this town, which is Chaudebon. On the other side of that town is our objective, which I will show you in a moment. Let's head south and look at the rest of the French initial disposition. Okay, so here we have the remainder of our French forces. They are entering the east map edges right here, past this hex right here. And the southern edge is a few hexes down. So you see we're kind of just outside of town. Our leader is this fine fellow right here, Lassigny, I guess, maybe. I don't know how you pronounce Lassigny. I don't know how you pronounce his name. My French is non-existent, basically. But he's also a captain. So he's commanding our company. He's in an H-39. You put the tank that the commander is in on top of the commander. So the other units in here, we have a couple of H-35s and a couple of H-38s, along with his H-39 command vehicle. And then we also have some H-38s here. There are 3 of those, and then there are 4 S-35s. So that is the setup. These guys are back a little bit. Now the French, let's talk about command range real quick. So command range is obviously important, and as are the number of commands. So the number of commands is based on the number of units you have and your grade. So as we saw in the introductory video, if you watched it, both sides have a seasoned grade, which is middle, and basically most of the modifiers that are based on grades are at neutral for seasoned, because above seasoned you have veteran and elite, and below it you have regulars and green. So here's our chart with available commands, right? So basically you count your number of units, and so we're in the seasoned row here. The Germans, for example, have 18. So you take the 10 value and you give them 6, and then you add the value of 8 to that to get 11. So they have 11. The French are the same. So both sides have 18 units and 11 command points. Here's our northern French force. Here's our northern German force. Here's our objective hill. I marked the 3 hexes with a victory point marker. Once somebody captures it, I'll use one of the national flag counters to kind of determine, or display rather, which side actually has that hex. Now we're going to shift down, move south. I'll show you the south half of the map and the objective there, and where both forces are starting. So here are our German forces, right? Map edge is right here. So this is where our commander is. Both of the southern forces have the commanding officer with them, so the company headquarters is with these units. Here's the town. To capture this town, you have to capture 5 of these 7 city hexes. So I just used one marker to put it in the middle rather than laying out 7, because you only need 5 to control the town. So I know, and I'll use, in my head, I'll keep track that, once somebody captures one of these, I'll put their national marker on it. And ultimately at the end, if somebody manages to control 5 of the 7, then they get the victory points for that objective. Now the French are, of course, over here, as you can see. So they're a little bit closer than the Germans. The Germans probably have a little bit less favorable terrain in terms of getting to there, although they do have this nice big hill here to kind of screen them depending on how they approach. But right now it looks like the most direct route would be along this line right here. We can get to the path, and if you move on a path, you can use the path travel, which would give us 2 extra hexes. So if you could get to this one, you could go 1, 2, 3. There There are rules about how which type of movement you use based on, basically you have to cover your entire move on road to get the road bonus. You have to move your entire move on the path to get the path movement rate, etc. So it's all very sensible, as I said. There's not a whole lot of movement is extremely straightforward. If you've played any tactical games, you'll pick up the movement in an instant. It's really, really straightforward. The combat is where things are interesting, because the model for this game uses a lot of factors. It factors in armor. It factors in whether the shot is level, rising, or falling. Obviously, it takes into account terrain and cover and so on and so forth. Like most tactical games, good ones will account for that kind of stuff anyway. But the model for the tank-to-tank combat in this game is outstanding. So we're going to get to that, but first we need to do our initiative roll. So you roll a D100 for both sides, and I guess I will use black and white for the Germans. Now they get a 20 bonus, a plus 20 DRM. Let's just do it this way. So I'm going to roll for them real quick. They get a 33. We'll use the white as the hundreds and the black as the individual units. So that's a 33 plus 20 would be 53. We'll do the same for the French. They get a 95. So the French minus 20, 75. The French actually have initiative and get to go first. So on our turn marker, and this is a 20 turn scenario, so I'll just put this down here quickly so you can see it. We have a turn counter. And put it on here on turn 1 for French initiative. Now, when you win initiative, you have the option to either do combat first. Well, basically, you want to be first player or second player. You get the choice if you win initiative. First player will do combat first, movement second, and vice versa. The second player would do combat second, but movement first. So you kind of have to look at what you're trying to accomplish, what your role is, etc. And with the die roll modifier, that's the game's way of kind of modeling which side is really the aggressor in that scenario. And obviously, this being the German invasion of France in 1940, the Germans have the plus 20 DRM for being the aggressor, while the French have the minus 20 DRM for being on the defense. In this case, however, the French won the die roll, so they have initiative, and they can elect to allow the Germans to go first, which might be the way that they would probably go, only because they get to then react in the movement to what the Germans have done. We don't have hidden units. I can't really use that rule because I'm playing solitaire. Now, there are solitaire rules that would account for that, and that one kind of runs the other side. So you play basically against a bot, so to speak. That system's really well done. I'm not going to go into that with this video series. I'm saving that stuff for later. There is a ton of stuff you can do with this series. I have the base game and all 4 expansions, so there's a lot of game there. And the North Africa game is coming out in the not too distant future, which I'm really looking forward to. That's actually going to be a standalone that won't require the previous games. I've seen images posted by Fernando Solo Ramos on Twitter of the components for that game. The box is massive, so there's going to be a ton of stuff in there, and I'm really looking forward to that. I P500'd that game on GMT a long time ago, and that one looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. So now we know who has the initiative. The French are going to allow the Germans to go first. There's not going to be any combat, and they know that, so that's why they can do this. This will allow them to move second. They can see, therefore, where the Germans are moving and maybe adjust to that. Honestly, in turn 1, there's not going to be a whole lot that goes on because the forces are too far apart to really get into combat. There's going to be a lot of terrain in the middle that's going to prevent the two sides from really seeing each other. Now, in theory, and you have spotting ranges and everything, and we'll get into that once we get into the turn and I start talking about combat and everything. So our sequence of play, we have the spotting phase is first. Then we have the command phase, which is an interesting thing. You have command phase before initiative. And I already rolled for initiative like a doofus because I had it in my head. Um, we have to put commands on everybody. And just for simplicity's sake, I was going to do this anyway, but I'm going to put movement commands on everybody, and we can just move them as a stack. We have 11 commands for both sides, so the number of commands aren't a big deal. They're all going to move. Both sides are just going to move all their units. So everybody's moving as a stack, basically. And you can share commands, and that's where command range comes in. With seasoned troops on both sides, the command range is, it's 1 hex is the range, which just means that they can share a command if they're within 1 hex of each other. There are rules that they kind of have to basically stick together. So you can't have them spread out too far and share a command. Now, the French didn't have radios, and that would fall under the command span optional rule, which I'm not using. So the French are going to basically have a little bit more of an advantage than they would have had or did have historically. But that's not a big deal in my opinion. So normally you would do this first and then do the initiative roll. I kind of did it out of order because I made a mistake. But ultimately, it's not a big deal, only because in this first turn, all we're doing is moving. Everybody's moving. So not knowing who has initiative before putting out commands isn't that big of a deal right now. In future turns, when we get close enough where we can start throwing steel at each other, then it's going to be a little bit different, because it's going to be important to decide who you want to give a fire order to, as opposed to a move, or maybe an overwatch, or maybe a short halt, which is a combination movement and fire, or fire and move rather. So you can mix it up. So for now, that's all we're going to do, and the Germans will get to go first. Everybody has a movement order. So the 5 types of orders, which I didn't really mention yet, you have no command, which basically is just, as you would guess, nothing. And then those are basically unlimited, because it's not a command. You're not actually using a command. You're just basically saying, sit still, stay put, which means they can't really do anything. They're not going to do anything. They're just going to literally sit still and not do anything. Then you have Overwatch, which everybody who's played a tactical game, I'm sure, is familiar with that. It's basically reaction fire. Someone moves or fires, you can fire back or fire at them. Fire, pretty self-explanatory. You fire at your opponent, at your enemy. There's no movement. It's a move or fire kind of thing, unless you use short halt, which is the 4th type, where you can do both in the same turn. And then, of course, there is movement, which is you just move. You just move, you don't fire. So, and we'll get into what each of those do, the mechanics of them. They're all pretty straightforward in general. The combat model is where all the complexity kind of comes in. There's just a lot of moving parts. Overall, the game is complex, but it's not so, what's the right word for it? The complexity is layered. And it's also fairly straightforward. All the pieces are straightforward. It's just that there's a lot of pieces. So that's at least my take on it. So we will get started here by doing the Germans' move next. Okay, so here we have our sequence of play. So we started with the spotting phase, and based on what we see right now, and I know I've zoomed in so you can really only see the Germans over here. But we have all kinds of, this foresty area is going to totally block line of sight from most of the other side. The northern French would not have visibility through this forest. The southern French would be blocked by this town that's right here, as well as this ridge, as well as this town. So we've got all kinds of stuff here. Now, maybe as they move through in this direction, we've got some sort of openish areas in here. But basically the spotting phase, which we skipped, because my general opinion is that there is no spotting right now. Nobody can see anybody else. And these guns do not have the range to reach out anyway. Looking at the longest range I can see on these cards that I'm looking at, it looks like the longest range for these guys is about 13. For now, we're going to skip the spotting phase. Then we have our command phase. Place command steps, that's putting your command markers down. Everybody has a move marker. Normally these would be upside down, or rather flipped, so that they say command on them, and then you reveal them during the movement phase. All right, so then we have the initiative phase. Now, I didn't do you can see the force grade modifiers for seasoned is 0, so I didn't even mention that. But the scenario gives the Germans a +20 and the French a -20, despite the fact that their grade is both seasoned, which would be no modifier. You can also say that it says winner determines first or second player for the turn. Again, first player goes first in combat, second player goes first in movement. Combat phase, first air phase, we're going to skip that. There are no aircraft in this scenario, so we're skipping it. Combat phase has 2 parts: the indirect fire combat, which would be like mortars and artillery and things like that. We don't have any of that either. You go first player, second player. Then you have direct fire combat, which in the case of this scenario will just be vehicle AP fire at other vehicles. That's all we have. So then you have first player, second player, and then Overwatch fire comes last. So Overwatch fire will always come last. So when we do put some units into Overwatch, both sides will fire before the Overwatch fire takes place. So that's a key component here. So we're skipping this as well because we don't have anybody with a fire marker, nor do we have anybody with a short halt marker, because again, we don't have anybody spotted, nobody's in range, so we can't have combat yet. So we're going to move to the movement phase. And then we would have close assault hand-to-hand. Again, that's for infantry, mostly. We don't have any of that, so we don't have to worry about it. And you can see in close assault, it goes first player, then second player. But in movement and overrun, which we also won't have overrun in this, you go second, then first, then we'll have the second air phase, and then the adjustment phase, which is really mostly about pulling your markers off and resetting for the next turn. So that's kind of the rundown and just where we are at the moment, and we're going to start moving our units. So we're going to start over here with these Northern Germans, and because they're starting off on a path, we're going to take these guys, and I'm going to just do, I think, path movement. So on a path, this is, all of these guys have a movement of 6, I believe. Yep, everybody's a 6, despite the fact that we have kind of a mixture here. We have Panzer 3s, we have Panzer 4s, and we have Panzer 1s, or 2s rather. So their movement is a 6, and if we stay on the path, we can actually go 6 hexes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That would put these guys here. These guys will follow along. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, I could have shared these movement commands with these guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But I don't need to. Well, I could have, but I have so many that I didn't really need to. And I know that they're on the fringe of the shot now, but that was kind of by design. And so now that we've reached this area, I'm going to probably next turn start moving them across this way. Again, this is an 18-turn scenario, so we don't have to necessarily rush. We are going to kind of meet up in this area in here. The victory point location is just to the north. I wanted to kind of zoom in a little bit so you'd see more of the map, but you'd also be seeing where the units are in terms of where they're moving. So now I am going to go and move our Southern Germans. And then once we're done moving the Germans, we'll move the French, and then we'll go on, do the adjustment phase, and move to turn 2. Okay, so here we have the rest of our German forces. Now these guys need to go this way towards the town, because this is the objective, right? So these guys have a movement rate of 9 on roads, and this gray is the road. So we could actually go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We could go as far north as that. We won't. But if we go up to the town and then cut through and go this way, we can get to the hill, maybe before the French can get to the hill, and then we would have a height advantage on the French, as opposed to coming straight across through here, in which case we're in open, clear terrain, and if they get up and maybe behind here, they can be hulled down behind these hedgerows. The way hull down works in this, because being hulled down is obviously an advantageous position for a tank, but to get to be hulled down, you have to search for it. So you roll, and to get hulled down in a clear hex, you have like a 10% chance of finding a spot. So that's really kind of how it's described in the rules, is you have to locate a spot where you can go hull down. Some terrain obviously is better suited for it than others. So I'm inclined to kind of go up the road into the town and then come across this way, because again, we'll have this ridge to screen us. I'm going to take this stack and we're going to move it up here. And then I'm going to take this stack and we're going to move it up here. And I should have used my bigger tweezers. But anyway, we're doing this so that we can then basically turn and just head this way. So next turn, this is clear. They'll be able to go 4 hexes. So like this one could go 1, 2, 3, 4 or something along those lines. And then this one could also go 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's also going to take them 3 to get to here. But that's going to end the German side of the movement phase, and we will move over to the French side. So just as we did with the Germans, we're going to move the French along the road, I think. So they also have a 9 on the road, I'm pretty sure. A 7, actually. So are these all the same? Yes, okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 would put them there. And honestly, if they tried to cut across, they wouldn't do much better at all. So we're just going to take these guys and we're going to 1, 2, whoops, I'm going to have to do this with my hand. So they were here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then next turn, because it's clear, they can go 1, 2, and then 3, because it won't count as road movement. They can get to here, and then this hill will screen them from the Germans that are coming this way, and vice versa. So that's the northern French. They're done. Now we'll move to the southern French. So their movement is also 7 on the road. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or 1, 2, 3. All right, so it helps when you look into the book for the expansion. So this is brush, which has a movement cost of 1 for all types. All of our types in this game are tracked, so it's going to be 1 to cross through here. It's also 1 to cross crops. So if they go 1, 2, 3, they would have to stop here. And that's because you have to use, the only way you can use the road rate is if you're on the road the whole time. Same thing with a path. So again, that's going to kind of slow them down a little bit. Now these guys can go 1, 2, 3. They'll stop there. These guys will go 1, 2, 3 and stop here. And these guys will go 1, 2, 3 and stop there. Yeah. Well, actually, they can go here. And then we can go up, we can use the path route because it's lower than the road and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for them. And so on for the next turn. So that would end the movement. And then in theory, you could put spot move markers on these. I know everybody moved, so I'm not going to bother with the markers. Again, that's the kind of thing where you can play it by the book and put all the markers on there, because when you move, that's a spotting modifier, and we'll get into spotting here in a little bit when I do the start of the spotting phase for turn 2. Well, I forgot to mention one thing, and that's facing. So facing is important when you're talking about tanks in this game, and you always want to, well, facing is important for all units, to be honest. So if we look at this counter, you can see that the gun is pointing that way, right? So that's the facing. It's always to the right, basically. So you always want to have your units facing a full hex side as opposed to a vertex. So you point it like that, and that would indicate he's facing this way. Now, every hex you move into, you get 1 free 60-degree turn. Obviously, there's 6 sides on a hex, so each 60 degrees adds up to 360 degrees, which, as we all know, is a full circle. So you get 1 free hex side you can turn with each hex that you move. If you do more than that, then it counts as movement, and it will count against your movement for that turn. So These guys would, because they are traveling down the road, their facing would be like that, and these guys would also be facing that way, or actually they'd be facing that way. So these are going this way, and this guy's now facing this way. And the same thing on the other side with the Germans. So I didn't do that in turn one, but because honestly, it doesn't matter right now. It doesn't matter. It's one of those things that doesn't matter, so I kind of ignored it. But I wanted to make note of it because it is important going forward that you do that. Although it's less important, it's important when taking fire with an armored vehicle in this situation, because the turret obviously lets you fire in a 360-degree field of fire. You don't have to worry about it. The turret spins all the way around. There's an optional rule where you can actually have a turret counter on top of each tank that you can point in the way that the turret is pointing. I'm not playing with that rule. I'm trying to keep it reasonably simple, even though we are using some of the advanced rules. The main advanced rules that we're going to be using in this one are going to be related to the AP combat. So basic game combat is really straightforward and simple. In this one, we're going to add some layers. We're going to talk about where it hits, and there's more involved with penetration and things like that. There's also ammunition, but in this case, we're early war. Everybody's basically using your basic kind of AP fire, so there's not a whole lot of, there's no heat rounds or high velocity AP or none of that stuff. So we don't have to worry about that. So spotting. So let's talk about spotting real quick, because we are at turn 2. And the first thing you do at the start of each turn is the spotting phase. So spotting's covered in the rules in section 4.1 in the basic rules, and then again in 6.1 in the advanced game rules. So it's more focused on leg, towed, and aircraft in 6.1. 4.1, the armored vehicles, the vehicles basically, how they spot is very reasonably straightforward. You have line of sight, of course, and you have different hex terrain in various hexes that affect the spotting. Very straightforward. So here, these are clear, of course. This is a crop. Now, this is a special hex type for this particular expansion. It's in other ones as well, I'm pretty sure, but it's considered medium cover. So when you're trying to spot a vehicle, you look at the terrain that it is occupying, and that's going to give you its cover rating. Now, as I mentioned, crops are medium cover. Clear, which is what these three are, is no cover. These guys are both in building areas, built up areas. Wood building cover is light, and these are wood buildings. So this is light cover. So they have no cover, they have light cover. So the base spotting range for all vehicles is 20 hexes. So light cover would give you a -1, a medium cover would give you a -2, and heavy cover would give you a -3. So here we have the spotting range chart right here. And this is the terrain effects chart. It's folded over, but that's the full thing. So this is our terrain effects chart, which has a cover column. So you can see what the cover is. And then you see your modifiers. Now, this is a fairly common thing throughout the game. These like -1, -2. They're not DRM or anything like that. Or just a simple modifier. They're a column or row modifier. So you can see here, V is for vehicle. So this is what you're looking at in terms of here. Now, again, size doesn't matter for this, for spotting. So you're going to be in the, you start in the 0. So again, it's 20. That's the base. Then if you're in light cover, you move to -1, it becomes 10. Okay. So again, it's only 10 for anybody in light cover. Medium cover, it would be a 7. Heavy cover, it would be a 3. And then when you get spot move or spot fire, again, as I mentioned, you could put a spot move because everybody moved. That would actually make them visible out to 40 hexes. So again, in theory, that would make them visible, but you have the line of sight that you have to worry about. And you have these wooden buildings here. They will block some of the line of sight. So terrain with a height of 1 or more. And again, looking at our terrain effects chart, if it's a +1 height, that's going to block your line of sight. So terrain with a height of 1 or more may block line of sight depending on the height of the spotting and target vehicle. So These guys are both at ground level. They're not up or down. They're just on ground level. So these buildings with a height of 1 will block line of sight between this and this. Same with this hillside. A hill has a height of 1. Now this says +1 because if you had the building on the hill, it would actually be height 2, right? This all makes sense, and it's very common throughout various tactical games. So this is not anything revolutionary or difficult to understand. So you have a whole list of things in here. And then in our Panzer Expansion 4 playbook, you have the two new terrain types, brush and crops. Brush terrain is treated as light cover for spotting, so it would give you the -1. And it's considered none when determining the GP, so basically leg units, etc. Defense factor, height is 0, so no height adjustment. And the hull down, again, you roll for hull down, you roll a D100, it has to be a 0, 1 to a 10. So basically a 10% chance of finding a hull down location in brush, as I almost dropped the playbook. Crops is the same thing. Treated as medium cover for spotting purposes, but is considered none for GP defense. Height is 0, hull down 0, 1 to 10. Again, movement cost is 1 for all modes of traction, leg tracked, half track, or wheel. Those are your 4 types of traction. So there you have that. So basically what this is all boiling down to is that these guys can't see these guys, vice versa. And up at the top, it's the same thing because we have terrain in between, like woods. Woods have a height of 3. Heavy woods have a height of 4. Light woods have a height of 3 as well. So normal woods are 3, heavy woods are 4, light woods are 3. That's more than enough to block line of sight. We have woods all over the place. There's woods right here, right here, right here, right here. We have these buildings, we have a hill, there's a hill up in the northern area, there's another hill right here, which you can't see right now. The point I'm making, nobody can see anybody else yet. So once we've done the spotting phase, the next thing on our sequence of play is the command phase. We know how many commands they have. They still have 11. Your number of commands will go down once you start losing units. So as a unit is eliminated, it's no longer counted as part of your 18 that you started with, of course. So you'll eventually have 17 or 16 or 15 or so on and so forth, and your number of commands will go down accordingly. Okay, so given that nobody has been spotted yet, etc., we're going to just kind of do the move command for everyone. And again, it's just pretty much the same as we did last turn. Both South forces are visible in this shot. French over here, Germans here. I think you can actually see the edge of one of the northern German units up there, but regardless, everybody has a move order. So the next step would be to determine who has initiative. So we will roll for that, same as before. And we'll start with the Germans. The colored die will be the 10s. 42 plus 20 is 62. And now for the French, 16 minus 20 is a -6. So obviously the Germans win initiative that time. And we are in turn 2 now. So we would do this. Like so. Germans have initiative. We have 18 turns in the scenario, so we're going to move on to the next phase. The next phase after that is the air phase, which of course we skip, the combat phase, which we of course skip again. So now we come to the movement phase. And again, we don't have close assault, so we're just doing regular movement. And the second player goes first. And I talked about giving the Germans initiative last turn, but in effect I really didn't because the Germans moved first. And that's what the second player does. Because I had that turned around in my head. So this time we are going to have the French will move first because the Germans have initiative. So again, I'm just kind of going to do this relatively quickly so that we can get hopefully to a situation where we may have some spotting and then we can start doing some shooting and actually get to the meat of the game, so to speak. So in terms of movement, we have these guys right here. So they have a terrain movement of 3. Now we can do path movement here, which they have a movement of 5 for that, or 6 and 5. Some of them have 6s, some of them have 5s. So we're going to take this guy right here, this stack of S35s, which have path movement of 6. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now they started on a road hex, but because most of it's on the path, we're going to use the path factor. We're going to make sure our facing. Now, when you're doing this, you could go that, then turn and move here, then move here and turn this way, move here and turn this way, etc. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, that's it. So they're there. Now we'll take these guys and do pretty much the same thing. They're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because our commander, well, these guys only have a 4 actually. The H-35s only have a 4, so they're going to end up here. The H-39s will have, they have a 5, so they're there. Their facing is this way. These guys facing, oh, they should be here. These guys facing is this way. Now, they're supposed to end in the same hex, and because they didn't, I'm just going to stick an extra move command on there. Because we have 11, we're only using currently 5, so we have extras. So, if you're playing head-to-head, you would say, well, we're going to split this, and I'm going to move, my H-39 is going to move 5 because that's their movement. The H-35s will move 4 because that's their movement. And again, they would all start with the command side up, like that, and then you would flip it when you're ready to move them, and then just leave the move on there. And then ideally you would mark them as, move spotted for movement. So since I know everybody's moving, I'm not using the counters for that. I know that they moved, and they all have move counters on them anyway. So these are H-38s that have a movement of 5, so they can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They will end up facing this way, like so. And again, facing isn't crucial at this particular moment because with the Germans here, they can't see over the hill and they can't see over the town. So the French are safe in here, and they're really close to getting into the town, and all of these hexes are victory point hexes. So let's move north and do the other French move, and then we'll swap over to the Germans, because what we're going to do is we're just going to jump over here. So they have a movement of 3. All of the units in here. We have a little bit of a mixture. We have a 39 and 4 38s. So all of them have a 3T. So they're going to go 1, 2, 3. And then they'll start on the road, and they can use path movement next turn to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get, I think they're 5s. 5, 5. Yeah, these are all 5s. So they'll be able to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get there. And they're facing is this, like so. All right, so now we'll do the Germans. The Germans have to move, so they're going to move through. They've got some scrub here. Now, again, they're also trying to get to this hill. So what we're probably going to do, and they have a movement of 4. These Panzer IIIs have a movement of 4. So they're just going to go 1 because this is brush. So since this is brush, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So they're in open terrain here. And their facing is correct. They are going in this direction. So we'll stick a move on there. So they're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And also be facing that way. Now, again, you can do it where you're saying, okay, we're going like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So that's the Germans. And then the Germans down here, so they're going to be starting to head this way. So they also have a movement of 4. I believe everybody's a 4 here. So they're just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess they're facing this way now. Put a move on them. And then these guys are going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And we'll leave them facing that. Well, maybe they should face that way too. So I didn't really talk much about adjustment phase, but there isn't a lot to do here. It's mostly removing your counters and ending the turn. There are more things to do when you have other units besides vehicles. So looking ahead to next turn, we've got our French right here along the bottom of this shot. They're going to go right up the path and get to the town, probably next turn. The Germans, on the other hand, are over here. They're going to head directly towards this hill. So the French are going to get into the town first. There's really no way around that. At least I don't think so. Because it could depend on initiative and who moves first as to where people get. But again, that's not going to be a big deal because of the hill. They won't be able to see each other until the Germans get to a point where they can see into the town. So that'll take a little bit. And honestly, it might be better for the Germans to go around the town. And again, I feel like in retrospect, I should have set them up here. And they could have just come across this way and then headed down. This town is closer to where the French started than to where the Germans started. And again, we could have just driven straight across the bottom here. But I was afraid of allowing the French to get into an advantageous position, which they still may. All right, so we're going to do the adjustment phase. I'm going to pull all the markers off. I don't think I really need to show you guys that. Then we'll come back and we'll start turn number 3. Okay, so spotting phase for turn 3. Now, again, any terrain with a height of 1 or more can block line of sight, which is one of the aspects of spotting. Now, I went through all this already, so I'm not going to overburden or overdo it by explaining this again. But basically, cover-wise, they're both in clear. I believe these guys are all in clear as well. So there's no modifier for that for spotting. However, the line of sight between all of these units and these two is blocked by the hill. So they can't see each other. Now up north, things are a little bit different, but there's still issues with the line of sight. Okay, so up here, we have our unit right here. Now, a straight line would give you this guy right here. So we know he can't see him because we have a hill here and we have buildings here. This would also block this guy. The question is this one, right? So you go center dot to center dot. I don't have a string right at this second. But again, because it's only one hex down, it's almost certainly going to hit this hex. And if it hits this hex, it's done. Because if it nicks a hex even a little bit, it's going to block line of sight. And it's 1 down and about 15 or more over. So it's almost certainly going to nick this hex. So no spotting. So again, there's no spotting. Nobody can see each other. And we're just going to continue on and go to our command phase. Now, again, the only commands we're going to use, I think, in my opinion, based on the situation with where the vehicles are, is just everybody's getting a move order. So everybody's going to get a move order, just like they've done before in all the other turns we've done, or the first 2 turns. So right now, it's just move, move, move. Everybody's moving. But we're getting to the point where some interesting decisions will need to be made in terms of what these moves will be when we actually move them. So that will make things a little bit more interesting, hopefully. In terms of what the next step, of course, now that we've given everybody a command, the next step is, again, to determine initiative. So, again, we will determine initiative, same way we've done it before. Roll for the Germans. They get a 69, which becomes an 89. So that's probably, yeah, they're guaranteed to have initiative. But we'll roll for the French anyway. They get a 44, which mods down to a 24. So the Germans have initiative. They will go first, basically, which means they will move second, because we are not going to have any combat. So once we've done that, we move on to first air phase, which is skipped, no aircraft. Combat phase, which is skipped, nobody's firing. And then we go to the movement phase with no close assault, we skip it. And then we go to movement and overrun combat. We won't have any overruns, but we will have movement. So the French, being the second player, will go first. They will move their units. Then the Germans will move. So that is the way this is going to work. We will start in the north. These French units up here are currently on a road, but it turns to a path here. So they're going to have to use the 5 for the path movement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They can get right here with a facing like that. Now, in hindsight, the Germans may have wanted to, or me, I might have wanted to put maybe an overwatch here, but the range is pretty long. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. These units are Panzer IIs, and I can almost guarantee they can't hit you at that range. Extreme for a Panzer II is 13 in terms of range, with a penetration of 3. The armor on the H-39, the armor is in basic terms, the armor is an 8. There's some variation based on where you might hit it, but it's going to be front side. Looking at it, front side would be where it would probably hit, and that would end up being almost certainly, a no damage. You might cause the crew to bail out or something maybe, but again, that's not going to really do much for us. So we're just going to say that he's moved and done, and we'll move down to the south. All right, so here in the south, we will now move our French units down here. Now they have an interesting situation because these guys are all 6s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, they'd be here. So we'll do that. We'll go here. And coming up the road, they would go here and then turn 1. So they're facing this way. And then at the start of the next move, they would turn and go down into the town. So right now they're facing this way. And so if they had slightly more movement, they could get up on if they could get here, they could see them and shoot at them. But he's not there yet. And so for now, that's a moot point because he has a move order. When you give your unit an order, you have to execute that order. If you give somebody a fire order, they have to fire if they have a target. If they don't have a target, then it just becomes a no command. That's kind of the beauty of the whole initiative thing going after commands are assigned, because you're assigning commands not knowing who's going to have initiative. All right, so he's here. This guy's got a 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So he'll go here and he'll be facing up north. These guys have a 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So they're going to be facing this vertex. Actually, he would be facing that way. And these guys have a 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they're going to join these guys in this hex, which is legal. There's 3 of these, 2 already there. So they're all together now. They'll split apart again because these guys have a higher movement. So that's going to be the end of the French move. And now we'll go over to the Germans. And since we're right here, we'll just move these Germans right here, right now. Yeah, the question is, how do we want to do this? Because we have the hill. If I move these guys 1, 2, 3, 4, oh, they were here. So yeah, they would not have been able to see them. There's also this wall here. Yeah, the French being able to get into the town first is going to give them some advantage. So let's see, what do we have? We have how many Panzer 3Fs we have? We have 1. We have our commander, and he's with some Panzer 2s. And he's got two 2s and 2 3s. And then these guys are all, we got some 3 Panzer 3s and a Panzer 1, or 2 Panzer 1s. So not exactly a lot of good armor here. This is going to be tough. We're pretty much going to, from the German standpoint here, we're going to have to pry the French out of this town. So that's going to be difficult, most likely. My Panzer IVs are north. So what we might end up having is, if the Panzer IVs, the French forces in the north are relatively thin. The French are stronger here, weaker up north. The Germans are stronger in the north, weaker down here. So we have a bit of a disparity. So the German strategy might just be, we're going to get on the hill and then sit and wait for them to complete their phase by taking the hill, knocking out those French tanks up there, and then they'll come down and we can hit the French from two sides. Maybe that's the strategy. So anyway, to kind of move on here, so I'm going to move these guys towards the hill instead of going this way. So he's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then right here facing the crest to go up, and then he'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, doing the same. Actually, 1, 2, 3. He'll go, I think he'll go here, like so. Okay, and then up here in the north, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then he'll go 1, 2, 3. I'm going to stop him here and turn him to face the road. Now that he's on a path, he can use path movement, which will give him 6, which will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which will get him here next turn. Whichever he had gone, because he started here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's about the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That might actually be better to just go like this. So he's going to do that, and then this guy. Now this is 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now he's on the road, and he's also in a position where he can shoot at this guy now. So he may get a fire. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And these are Panzer IIs. Yeah, well, we may give them a fire order just because we can, even though it's probably not going to do anything. Because the height here is not going to block line of sight, nor is this one. So if the Germans get initiative, they can, we're going to put a fire order on this guy. And when if the Germans get initiative and go first, he'll be able to fire. Now, in terms of what the French are going to do, I'm probably going to keep a move order on this guy and just kind of go around the corner here with his 3, 1, 2, 3, get behind the hill. And then he's going to try to get up onto the hill where he'll have a little bit of an advantage as the Germans come in to try to attack the hill. So that's the thinking as we wrap up turn number 3 here. So in turn 3, the Germans had initiative, so the French moved first, and we're going to do the adjustment phase here, where I'm basically just going to pull the markers off. We're going to move on to turn 4. I'm actually going to stop the video here. I know there was no combat in this particular video, but hopefully you got an idea of kind of the tactical situation, as well as the mechanics for things like spotting and movement and the command phase and all that stuff, and how all of that kind of works. And then in the next video, which will hopefully be up very soon, maybe tomorrow. I'm hoping, that's my goal. We'll see how things go. But yeah, I want to kind of get, the next video will be probably the final video of the series for now, and it'll have combat in it. I promise. So as always, thanks for watching. Feel free to comment, questions, suggestions, etc. As always, that's always welcome. I like interacting with you guys, so if you have something to say, feel free to do so, and I will reply appropriately, I suppose I should say. Anyway, that's going to do it. My name's Joe. This has been Hexed Encounter. It is Tanktoberfest. This is Panzer from GMT Expansion number 4. Video number 1 of our 2-part gameplay video, so look for the next one in the near future. But for now, I'm just going to leave you with one thought. Have happy gaming.